Next up, this one was both of our team. Like, but I feel like, I don't know. This is one where like, I'm just like really excited about it. I have ideas on what to expect from Houston this year. I'm really excited about what the Houston Rockets are going to look like this year. Like I said, I think on a previous show, I will watch probably the first like 12 games that Houston plays, like every single one, just because I want to figure out what exactly the situation looks like. I want to figure out what the kids look like. Are they going to let Reed Shepherd, be the primary backup point guard? How do they use Amen Thompson, who used to play more of a point guard role with overtime elite, but transitioned into more of a do it all, frankly, like a Michael Clayton, like Mr. Fix It, basically, for, the second half of the season last year for Houston. I am so fascinated by this team. I am so interested in every single thing that they're going to do. Jabari Smith is a guy that like doesn't get talked about, and he averaged like 14 and 8 last year as a 20-year-old in the NBA. Alperen Şengün continues to take strides and take leaps forward. They have contract year situations potentially, depending on what they do with their extensions, which, by the way, go listen to the last episode. We talked about Houston at length. Keith Smith and I talked about their extension situation, their cap situation next summer, what they could do with Şengün and Jalen Green's situation. They might end up having contract year situations from Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, and frankly, Fred VanVleet as well, because Fred VanVleet has a team option next season. So they might want to try and figure out, is he the guy moving forward, or, are we going to try and have cap space next summer for some reason, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention those guys as well. I think as I count here, there's it's a team, you have like 10 guys who I think all are going to expect to play. And that's not counting one of the backups.
I think it's more than that, to be honest with you.
5, 6, 7, 8.
So I'll just list them off. Fred VanVleet definitely expects to play next year. Dylan Brooks especially expects to play next year. Steven Adams, I would imagine, expects to play next year. Jalen Green certainly expects to play. Jabari Smith certainly expects to play. Amen Thompson expects to play. I would say Şengün certainly expects to play. Tari Eason should expect to play. Cam Whitmore is going to expect to play. I would say that like Reed Shepherd should probably expect to play.
I counted him.
I would say Jayshawn Tate and Jock Lawndale also expect to play. So like, I'm not saying that like they might be in, they might be out of the rotation, but like, again, both of those guys in contract years, Jayshawn Tate has shown he can be like a valuable, versatile wing who has really helped them with ball movement and, a lot of different things during his time in Houston. And then Lawndale's coming off of an awesome Olympics and honestly, frankly, like a pretty good end of his season last season as well.
Yeah, so there's 10 guys there, and that's not counting Adams and Lawndale, who's like, I just don't know which you're going to play or how they're going to decide that. And so, again, this is a good problem. We've said this so many times when we did the under 24. We talked about all the different Rockets players that were on that list in some capacity. It will just be that's not an easy position for Ime to decide who's going to play, what are the rotations, and kind of who meshes best together, right? Is Fred and Jalen the best backcourt, combination, or is it actually somebody else? And so do you change who starts? Do you stagger? Who are the guys on the wing? Who fits best off of Şengün? Because here's the thing. I think I'll be interested in this. I think the most important thing for this team is to find out what Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün are. I think a lot of people know, but you got to have that answer by the end of this season with both of those guys, assuming nothing happens before the season. And so you got to put them in the best situation for both of them to be successful, so you know what to do with them going into the offseason.
It is by far the most timely issue facing the
Timely is
Rockets,
a good word. That's
I would say.
Yeah.
Is Jalen Green the guy we saw in March last year, or is he the guy we saw before March last year where he was like inconsistently closing games and maybe not necessarily a critical, player for them moving forward? Because like I said, there were plenty of times last year where Jalen Green would, be out for the entire fourth quarter, frankly. It wasn't like a wildly regular occurrence, but it happened more than you would like to see for a guy that, you're making a decision on as to whether or not to spend $30 million a year on, right? So trying to determine who those guys are, and we kind of know who Şengün is. We
Yeah, yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
know that he's going to be like an all-star. Really, it's Jalen Green more than anything. But with
So
Alperen Şengün, if you're going to give him a max,
yes.
figuring out what rosters work best around him is really important.
So
Figuring out.
yes.
So Amen Thompson, I would argue, and part of this could have just been purely due to opportunity, right? Because he got more opportunity when Şengün went out. I would like to see more of Alperen Şengün and Amen Thompson playing together and understand exactly how that works. It can totally work. I'm not saying that it's not going to work. I would like to know more about how it works and how they see it working before I make a crazy, financial decision on this, right?
No, that's a good point with Şengün. It's not so much of like, is he good or not, or how good? We know he's really good. It may be like what level of good or what exactly do you need around him if he's going to
It
be the hub of your offense or
it
something
it
like that.
could truly be that you find you need 5 shooters around Şengün at all times, right?
Yes.
And with Amen Thompson and with, frankly, Tari Eason has made shots throughout the course of his career, but if you look at the percentage of guarded versus unguarded shots that Tari Eason takes, it's very clear that like opposing teams don't see him as a shooter, and he does not really get guarded in that way. Uh, you know, Trying to figure out, okay, who are the guys that we have, and do we value Alperen Şengün more than the guys we have, right? Do we value potentially different types of lineups, different types of play styles than what Şengün gives us? It's not to say Alperen Şengün isn't great. He's unbelievable at basketball. The way he thinks through the game, the guy is, a savant in so many ways. But they have so many young guys. They have so many interesting dudes that they arguably might have like more optionality in terms of how they go about building their roster in their future, maybe than any team in the league right now. Like they might find out by the end of this year that Reed Shepherd is like
Well, that's
a
what I said.
serious guy,
You want
right?
to
And
you
that
you
changes things.
you got to find out what he is, right? Like we haven't talked about winning. I know Rockets fans want to win, and I get it. I understand. But to me, this season is more about like, what if Reed is a dude? That changes potentially what you do with Fred VanVleet. What if Cam Whitmore is what you and I thought he was coming into the draft, and the knee's going to hold up, and then you have that answer. Or here's the other thing. Like, let's play the other side of the coin. We're always very positive about the Rockets. I think it's fair to. What if you find out these dudes aren't what you think they are? Maybe you've only find out a couple are, that Şengün is with a couple other guys. You have a lot of things to go make a trade. What if a star comes available, Sam, that you're like, this is the time to strike? Like, it's a younger player that maybe fell out of favor, and we can trade a couple of our young guys and maybe a
Yeah.
future pick or something and go get him. It's just why they're fascinating to me. There's so much talent. There's so much young talent. They're good. They're competitive. They're going to win. But you said it perfectly. There's so much optionality with how this thing looks moving forward. There's so many forks in the road. They can go so many different directions, and it's fascinating. I'm so excited to watch it play out.
Yeah, to the point on like how do Alperen and Şengün and Amen Thompson play together? Last year they played 374 minutes together, and they were a minus 3.15 net rating when they were together, because the team gave up 115 points per 100 possessions and only scored 111.9, right? So, and again, I'm not saying that, don't freak out, Houston fans. I'm not saying they can't play together. I'm saying that these are two really young guys with skill sets that, neither of which involve shooting in this case. And I think it's worth trying to determine, what does an offensive fit look like? Can you run weird dribble handoffs with them? Can you try and run some weird things where like Amen Thompson is constantly back cutting and you have Şengün at the top, and that's how you're spacing the court? But to do that, you probably need like a really high level floater game, or you need Şengün to be able to hit mid range and 3-point jumpers. there are just a lot of things to try and figure out. Jalen Green, right? His big leap in March last year, and I'm not saying it was because of this that the leap happened, but his moment last year by and large came after Şengün missed a number of games, right? He didn't really play in March. So what do those two look like together on the court? And frankly, just who are the guys you're building around?
Yeah.
You have so many options here, but there's only one ball. Cam Whitmore likes to shoot, guys. Like, Cam Whitmore is a guy that I love. I know Bryce loves. We both had him top 5 in the 2023 NBA draft. He looked last season like a guy that very well, should have been ranked in the top 5 at times of the 2023 NBA draft. But where does he get shots when you have Jalen Green in a contract year, Alperen Şengün in a contract year, Fred VanVleet in a contract year? Dylan Brooks, was not as shot happy as what I had. He played the role I hoped that he would play for Houston last year. Dylan will at times like to shoot the ball. There are just Jabari Smith is a guy that is entering an extension year potentially. I would imagine that he would like to take a step forward. And he's a guy that's like, I don't know if it's like gotten enough play that like Jabari is like a very serious minded individual who like really wants to get better at basketball. And like, I think is the kind of mentality that he's going to keep improving at basketball. And, I think there's a chance that he could take a leap this year. They have so many guys that might just take a leap. And oh, by the way, Tari Eason missed the last however many games last year, 50 games or whatever. And he's going to play 20 minutes at least a game this year because he deserves it. He's one of the most productive players per minute in the NBA when he's on the court. So they have so many dudes. It's so hard to determine where all of this goes in Houston.
And young guys that are trying to prove themselves, some guys in contract years, all of that. It's just going to be a lot to massage and figure out and keep. I don't even want to say happy because like I don't know that guys would be unhappy. It's things to figure out while also trying to win games because they were a competitive basketball team last year, obviously. And so it will be interesting to see how they manage it. And because of that, like you said, there's going to be, I think between the two of us, we're going to watch a lot of Houston Rockets games and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it really is. Oh, by the way, like Ime Udoka is there and Ime, to me at this point, looks like an awesome coach.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
His year in Boston and, everything that happened with him off the court ends up with him departing Boston. And now we're here in Houston and he led them to a 41 win season last year. He looks like a really, really like might be a great coach based off of what we've seen in his 2 years. It's not an enormous sample yet. And he didn't even make the playoffs last year with Houston, but his 2 years in charge of a team, I would argue have been exceedingly positive to this point. So, does he continue to grow and showcase that he is like a real, like he might be Ty Lue, right? Like he might be like a serious basketball coach. So Houston is in an incredibly positive situation, but this is when it starts to get harder is when you're trying to level up, right? And oh, by the way, like one thing we've talked about with Houston, and we'll move on after this, is do they have like a number one guy,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know that necessarily they have that undeniable, we've got a dude that, we think can lead us to a title, like a superstar level player. I think Alperen Şengün looks like an all-star. I think that, Reed Shepherd has real star qualities. I think that Amen Thompson has all-star qualities. But to be a dude, you have to be able to be like a 3-level scorer, to be a high-level processor, to be a, so you have to be able to be a solid defender. You have to do so many different things. They have a lot of guys that do some of those things, but don't combine it all into one player. Like we project Victor Wembanyama to the dominance that Luka Doncic has shown throughout the course of his career. the incredible growth that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has continued to show, the ability that Nikola Jokic has shown to be special in that regard. Maybe Şengün has that kind of jump in him. I am skeptical of that, but maybe he does, right? I would love to see it if he does. They're just a lot of they need the number one guy, and I don't know that they have him yet, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and again, like that's one thing we'll find out. Like, can Şengün be that absolute hub of the offense that is that level of player? It's just hard to give him those keys when you also need to find out what is Jalen Green and you're trying to win games. So then Fred's going to play with the ball in his hands. And as you mentioned, like if Cam Whitmore's not getting a bunch of shots, I mean, I don't dislike everything about the rest of Cam's game, but like that's the thing I was most excited about was him getting buckets. And so it'll just be you have to navigate all of those different things and figure it out while you're trying to win games, be competitive, keep people happy, but find out some of these answers to your team and specifically your young players.